video, I'm going to show you why I believe the Orange Micro Dark is actually a blues amp and not really a metal amp. And it's certainly a better blues amp than the Micro Terror. Let's do it. Orange Micro Dark is certainly a very good all-round tiny little monster. It definitely has more gain on tap than I certainly need and has enough gain for most styles of music. It does a very, very good high gain, chunky sound. It's probably not the tightest one in typical Orange style. Maybe it's because of the solid state power section, but it has a valve preamp and sounds really good. If you search YouTube or Google, most of the reviews you're going to see about this amp talk about how this is a really, really good, affordable, high gain amp, and it is the metal solution to this. I certainly think that it can do metal, but personally for me, I think it maybe doesn't have a tight enough low end and is overall a little too fuzzy. So in order to do those tight metal riffs, you might want to run a overdrive pedal, something like a tube screamer, just to tighten things up and get it to cut a little more. For me, at high gain levels, this is definitely more Mastodon than Megadeth. It's stoner rock, it's early Sabbath, it's maybe not thrash metal. So having said that, where I actually think this amp really comes alive and really shines is its light, overdriven blues rock sound. And that's something that is often overlooked with this amp. And I actually think that maybe the marketing around it or the reviews around it maybe have not stressed that point enough. If you've played one of these or the Micro Terror, you will notice that the controls are very simplistic, but actually very, very sensitive. So the dials in terms of the gain and the volume are incredibly sensitive. So something very magical happens when you put the volume where you need it, pushing it a little bit, and then you slightly play with the gain knob. My setup, I'm literally just a little bit above the halfway mark. And again, the shape to taste, but very similar. It loses that fuzzy sound, and you have the character of the preamp coming out, and it's very sweet but cutting at the same time. And this is something very, very unique to this amp. So in a funny way, by having the dials on a lower gain setting, this amp becomes a far more versatile amp for low gain and slightly overdriven, crunchy sounds than when you max it out as a high gain monster. And for me, that's the reason why this sounds much better as a low gain rock blues amp than a high gain amp, and also much better than the Micro Terror at doing what in theory the Micro Terror should do better. As you can hear in the sound clips, all the parts are played on this specific setting, and also just for some of the solos, I've used a very inexpensive Sonicake overdrive pedal, so you guys don't think I'm using a overdrive that costs more than the amp. So just to push it a little bit, and that is another added feature of using this as a lower gain amp. It takes pedals fantastically well. Yes, you do have a effects loop, which the Micro Terror doesn't have, but even in front of the amp, on a low gain setting, the pedals just bring it up and do what a traditional valve amp actually does, and it sounds fantastic. So I really think that this becomes a versatile, incredibly clear sounding amp, because that is the main difference between something like this and a modeling amp. Because a modeling amp, those overdriven sounds, those slightly on the edge of breakup sounds, are the hardest thing to get right because they don't ring properly, they don't feel proper. Here, you can hear every single note. It has that bell-like sound, which we all love in traditional blues, and that's the kind of sound that we want. So overall, I'm not really saying that it's a marketing fail by Orange, and I'm not saying that it can't do metal or any other heavy type of music, because it clearly can. But you would be very easily led to believe that this is a high-gain monster, which, because it's a single-channel amp, can only do that high-gain sound, which actually, digging a little deeper and by playing around with the very sensitive controls, you will find maybe, but just maybe, this is one of the best blues amps that you'll find out there. So blues, blues rock, anything low gain, overdriven. I don't know whether this was the original intention by Orange when they released this amp, or whether it's just a very, very nice accident when they retweaked and revoiced the clean aspect of the amp. It is different to the Micro Terror. It sounds better when you put the volume up and dial the gain down. I think we all agree that it has a nicer, cleaner sound, so maybe that fed through to the edge of breakup overdriven sound. But whatever the reason is, this beats a lot of those small tube amps that are very famous for slightly overdriven bluesy sounds. So what do you guys think? Do you prefer the Micro Dark as a high gain amp or as a lower clean amp? Do you guys actually like the slightly overdriven and clean sounds of the Micro Dark more than the Micro Terror? Let me know in the comments, because I am genuinely really interested in knowing how you guys use the Dark Terror, and I think it's interesting to always consider using amps that maybe haven't been marketed that way, or maybe haven't been used by many players that way, in a different way. Make it your own. Get your own sound, get your own style. But that's it for today. I'm going to go back and play some generic blues licks on the Micro Dark, and as usual, thank you guys very much for watching. Be good to each other, rock and roll, and peace.